My dear daughter, it begins in whispers. No one perceives it initially. You are 7 years old, gazing into the eyes of a parent who is unraveling. Perhaps it is addiction. Perhaps it is rage. Perhaps it is merely the vacant silence of someone too fractured to be present. And without utterance, something primordial awakens in your small consciousness. If I don't maintain equilibrium, everything will collapse. This is how a daughter vanishes. Not in body, but in psyche. She smiles more radiantly. She weeps less openly. She learns to sense the emotional atmosphere before she dares speak. She becomes the emotional regulator of the entire household. She transforms into a miniature adult long before her soul is prepared, and the world celebrates her for this sacrifice. You're so mature for your age. You're so responsible. You're so strong. But no one ever pauses to inquire, at what psychic cost? This is the invisible mourning of those daughters who matured prematurely. And today, my beloved girl, we're going to illuminate the psychology of that lost child, because the effects don't dissolve with the passage of years. They sculpt you. They accompany you into relationships, vocations, your very sense of worthiness. And if you don't comprehend what transpired in those formative years, you'll spend your adult existence repeating the survival patterns that once preserved you, but are now slowly extinguishing your authentic self. The archetypal wound of parentification. Let's begin with what's genuinely occurring in the depths of your developing psyche. When daughters are compelled to emotionally sustain adults instead of receiving that sustenance themselves, depth psychologists call this parentification. It's when a daughter becomes the caregiver, the peacemaker, the therapist, the guardian of fractured souls. This isn't merely unhealthy, my dear. It fundamentally rewires the architecture of your brain and the landscape of your soul. Because when a daughter is consistently positioned as the keeper of emotional regulation, either her own turbulent feelings or those of volatile others, it creates what we call hypervigilance. You exist in a state of perpetual scanning for danger. You walk on eggshells through your own home. You discover that love is a transaction, not a gift. You offer peace, and perhaps they'll grant you safety in return. You learn that your needs are dangerous territory, and theirs are urgent imperatives. So you disappear. Not physically, but emotionally. Your essence retreats into shadow. And in your place grows a version of you that performs exquisitely. You become the good daughter, the silent achiever, the therapist to your friends, the one who never dares ask for anything. And you wear this persona so convincingly that even you forget it's merely a mask concealing your true face. But deep within the hidden chambers of your psyche, something aches. Something mourns because the inner child you buried alive didn't perish. She's still in there, screaming silently across the years. Why didn't anyone protect me? Why did I have to become the protector? The shadow of premature adulthood. As you mature into womanhood, the symptoms become more intricate, more subtle, more devastating. You might become what Jung would call hyper-independent, refusing help, pushing away connection, never feeling truly safe in the vulnerability that love demands. You might experience emotional numbness during joyful moments because happiness feels unfamiliar, unearned, even dangerous to your conditioned nervous system. You might struggle profoundly to rest because productivity has become the only pathway through which you've ever felt worthy of existence. And most tragic of all, you might not even realize you're still imprisoned in survival mode. Because when dysfunction is normalized in those crucial early years, your nervous system accepts chaos as your natural baseline. Stillness feels wrong. Peace feels suspicious. Love feels like a debt you'll inevitably have to repay. This is the psychology of a daughter forced to abandon her childhood. It's not merely sadness, my dear. It's a complex trauma that fundamentally reshapes how you perceive the world, and more critically, how you perceive yourself. Now you may wonder, why would any daughter willingly assume such a burden? The answer lies in what Jung understood about the archetypal child. Children will do absolutely anything for attachment, even abandon their own souls in the process. The choice is never conscious. It's biological, instinctual, archetypal. In the absence of safety, the daughter sacrifices authenticity for belonging. That's not weakness, my beloved. That's intelligence. That's survival instinct operating at its most primal level. But here lies the tragedy that breaks my heart. What saved you then now imprisons you. A high-functioning adult with a neglected inner child. So many daughters are navigating the world as high-functioning adults, while deeply neglected inner children pull invisible strings from the unconscious. We overachieve to earn love we should have received freely. We remain silent to avoid the abandonment we've always feared. We care for everyone while secretly harboring a desperate wish that someone would simply ask if we're okay. And that fantasy that someone will finally notice you're not as strong as you pretend to be, that maybe, just maybe, you'll finally receive permission to fall apart and be held. That is the unmet need, not of your adult self, but of the daughter who never got to be a daughter. The first step toward healing isn't fixing yourself, my dear. It's witnessing what happened to you. Because until you validate the truth of your experience, you'll continue gaslighting yourself with dismissive thoughts. It wasn't that severe. Other daughters had it worse. I turned out fine. But fine is a mask too, isn't it? And deep in the hidden recesses of your soul, you know this truth. The adult inheriting the wounded child. So what becomes of that daughter when she matures into womanhood? She becomes an adult who never feels safe, even in rooms filled with calm. She becomes a lover who cannot trust softness or surrender. She becomes a giver who cannot receive without guilt. She becomes the kind of woman who apologizes for weeping, who flinches at genuine compliments, who confuses exhaustion with accomplishment. This is the profound cost of maturing too rapidly too soon. Because if your childhood trained you to be strong at the expense of being soft, to remain quiet instead of honest, to repair others while ignoring your own fractures, then what kind of womanhood do you inherit? You inherit an existence where you're perpetually holding your breath, waiting for someone to grant you permission to finally collapse. But here's the truth that will set you free, though it may first make you weep. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried in shadow. You, my dear daughter, are the one who must journey back into the underworld of your own psyche and hold her hand. You are the one who must speak the words no one else ever offered. You didn't deserve that treatment. You were merely a child. You're allowed to rest now. The journey of shadow integration. This is the beginning of what Jung called shadow work, the courageous confrontation with the disowned parts of ourselves. Not fixing, not performing, not bypassing the pain with superficial positivity, but turning courageously toward the abandoned fragments of yourself and declaring, I see you now. I hear your silent screams now, and I'm not leaving you in darkness anymore. That is the reparenting process, my beloved, and it's brutal in its honesty because it requires you to finally feel the grief you never had time to feel. It asks you to sit with the rage, the sorrow, the unfulfilled needs that haunt you, to weep for the birthdays where no one truly showed up for you, to mourn the innocence you sacrificed while protecting people who should have been protecting you. But that grief, it's not weakness manifesting. It's proof that healing is finally occurring, because what was once frozen in psychological ice is finally melting, finally falling, finally flowing again. Jung understood that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But first, we must excavate who we were forced to become. The patterns that follow you. Now, let's illuminate how this survival pattern manifests in your adult life. Subtly, tragically, often invisibly even to yourself. You might become a therapist in all your friendships, yet never permit anyone to truly witness your vulnerabilities. You might be praised for your independence when deep in your soul, you're terrified of becoming a burden. You might find yourself in relationships where you overfunction constantly, always fixing, managing, over-explaining, while wondering why resentment builds like water behind a dam. You might struggle profoundly with boundaries because saying no still feels like betrayal, like abandonment, like the very thing that wounded you. These are not personality traits, my dear daughter. They are coping strategies, learned, conditioned, unconscious. And here's the liberating truth. They are also unlearnable. But only when you stop idolizing your strength and start honoring your wounds as sacred teachers. The questions that heal. One of the most powerful acts of healing you can perform is this. Ask your inner child, that daughter frozen in time, what did I need back then that I never received? You may hear answers that shatter your heart. I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I was truly doing. I needed to play, to rest, to laugh without the shadow of fear. And slowly, with infinite patience and tenderness, you begin offering those very things to yourself. Not to repair your past, that's impossible, but to stop compulsively reliving it. This is how you cease seeking parents in your partners. This is how you stop mistaking anxiety for intuition. This is how you stop fleeing from the child you were and the woman you're becoming. Jung once declared, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But shadow work demands that we face it courageously, all of it. The neglected parts, the ashamed fragments, the terrified child, the rageful shadow. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new and unrecognizable. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be to survive. Your permission to be soft. So, my beloved daughter, if you're someone who grew up far too fast, know this truth in the marrow of your bones. Your maturity was never the problem. The problem was that you had no choice. The choice was stolen from you by circumstances beyond your control. But now you have choice. You can choose softness over armor. You can choose to rest without earning it. You can choose to stop managing everyone else's emotions and start honoring the validity of your own. And no, this transformation won't manifest overnight. There will be days when you feel like that small child again, vulnerable, uncertain, afraid. Good. That's precisely the point. Let that daughter come home from her exile. Let her cry those long-held tears. Let her play without purpose. Let her finally be seen, because you're not broken, my dear. You're becoming whole. And perhaps for the first time, you're finally growing up the right way. Not through pressure, not through fear, not through premature responsibility, but through truth, through consciousness, through integration of all you are. The future you get to, right. You never had a childhood, but you still have a future stretching before you. And this time, you get to write it. You get to author your own story. You get to become the mother to yourself that you needed then. This is not about blaming those who failed you. They too were likely wounded children in adult bodies, repeating patterns they never had the consciousness to interrupt. This is about breaking the chain. This is about saying, the wound stops here, with me, in this generation. Jung taught us that the meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. You've been running from that shadow for so long, my dear. But she holds the key to your wholeness. So turn toward her, embrace her. Tell her she was right to feel what she felt. Tell her she didn't fail. Tell her she survived something that should never have been asked of a child. And then with infinite compassion, lead her gently into the light of your conscious awareness, where she can finally rest. With all my love and understanding, your witness on this journey of becoming whole.